Hello, everyone. It's Jerry at the Fledge, and welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. We are at episode 346 today. I can hardly believe it. Now we're below 20. So I told you, 365 in a row, and it's going to be made happening. So quick shout out to the Fledge Foundation, one to Shannon, who is the executive director, as you all know, and then another to Dustin for making this shirt. Bigger Brain, Better World. It's a celebration of diversity, which, as you know, comes from inclusion, and it is a way to make us more powerful, smarter, stronger, and all of that together. So thanks, guys, for everything you do to help with the basic needs and building people up and equity up. So now to my guest today. How you doing today, Ida?
I'm good, Jerry. How are you doing?
I am doing spectacular. So you had a bit of a long drive. Not a long drive, but
not too bad. It was about an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Thank you very much for coming in and doing the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I can't wait to get to your story because I think it's a story that needs to be told and paid attention to and heard. So we're going to have this awkward thing of we don't know where to look. So just do what you need to do.
Awesome.
But who would you like to give some shout outs before we get into the story?
Real quick, I would like to give a shout out to Robin Schneider, Brian Basor, Jim Salame. I can't think of his name right now.
That's okay. It's
Yeah.
always horrible when
Yeah.
I realize people are going to start listing them. And
I
then I
know.
forgot 3 people and all of that.
But my shout out is for support in the industry that many look down upon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's, do you want to hear all my Robin Schneider stories?
Let's do it.
So I have known Robin for a while because her dad went to Everett
Okay.
here in Lansing with my mom and dad, or they grew up together. I'm not sure they all went to school together. And then I worked for Vaughn at the Small Planet in the 80s, and Vaughn is her uncle. So her and I go way back. We were talking about medical marijuana, I don't know, for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think somewhere in our DNA with our parents, we got the idea that in our lifetime, we need to see this legal.
Right.
And I think our parents actually had a huge influence on that.
I would agree.
And I love Robin Schneider. So
Yes.
if you don't mind, let's talk about you a little bit. Where were you born and raised and went to school and all of that?
I was born in Flint, Michigan. My family is originally from the South, though. So my roots come from Chattanooga, Tennessee. So I was raised as a, oh my gosh, I can't even think of the religion right
Like
now.
a Southern Methodist
Southern
or something?
Baptist, yes. So it was, where the preacher was, yelled, it was fire and brimstone. And basically, if you sinned, you were going to be struck down and go to hell. And so it was trying to walk that line of being a perfect angel all the time.
Did you ever see someone get struck down?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. I was lucky because my mother had to spend the summers as a Mennonite with her family up north. And so by the time she had us, she was so against all of that organized religion that we
Right.
never went to church a day in my life.
Nice. Yeah.
So I felt
It's
lucky
interesting
for
the
that.
fear that's instilled at
Yeah.
such a very young age. It's mind blowing. Yeah.
And then now, there's so much stigma with the church that a lot of young people, especially in the LGBTQ community,
Mhm.
or maybe people who are living in poverty and doing a little bit with the legacy market. Some people call it a black market or a gray market.
Right.
They have stigmas against the church. So the church loses out on a lot of people now because of just being turned off by that. So
Right.
the church needs to get on the right side of history here in some things.
It's interesting how, they want to involve community support, but when it really comes right down to it, it's only their community that they support.
Often.
Yeah.
But I will give a shout out to Unity Spiritual Center, who has been super badass at being inclusive and trying to eliminate that stigma and looking at life as many paths.
Nice.
It doesn't have to be Jesus or Allah or whomever.
Right.
So
There is no right answer.
right. So you survive the growing up as a Southern Baptist.
Yes.
And what'd you do after? Did you go to school in Flint Northern, Flint?
No, I actually, so from after I was born, we moved over to Grand Blanc,
Okay.
and I went to Grand Blanc community schools, throughout. I graduated from there. And then from there, I went to Western Michigan University and had a degree, wanted to go into dietetics. Again, kind of fell through the cracks, kept going into, the advisory, counselor and asking for, guidance. And there really was none. And, like I said, I ended up taking a philosophy class because I love philosophy. And the first paper I turned in, I got an E on. And it's like, what's going on here? What did I do wrong? And it was because I didn't answer the questions how he wanted them answered. And so that really started opening my eyes up to like, okay, what is this all about? Like, if I don't follow the rules, I'm persecuted. And if I do, I'm still persecuted.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
It's interesting that you would get it. I didn't think anybody would ever get an E on a paper in philosophy, right? It
blew me away. I thought that's what it was free interpretation. And apparently that wasn't the course. And
this is what he meant and stick to it. So
Yes.
another dogma thrown in your face, probably, right?
Yep, exactly.
Is there going to be a pattern of you taking on dogma
No.
coming up?
I'm good.
So whatever happened at Western and Kalamazoo there, what'd you do after that?
I had a series of events through college, really life-altering events where I was involved in a car accident. I wasn't really able to go through finals because my mom herself was involved in a car accident. And so I was trying to deal with, my brother and her, and then I was involved in a car accident. My house had burned down. It was literally a series of events that had occurred. And it was before I could really deal with one issue, something else was going on. And I was looking for a way out. And that led to my first relationship with my first husband.
And so then I think you had a son.
I have 2 sons.
And then you had another son.
Yep. Remarried to a Greek Orthodox. So there was the whole religion aspect again. I think my family, if they could have disowned me, they would have.
Well, that was a long wedding you made them stand through or something, right?
Exactly.
The Greek Orthodox. I've been to one.
Yeah. And then just, it's just how close-minded culture can be. It's interesting. Yeah.
So then the hero of our story today was born.
Yes.
Bella.
Yeah. Gabriella Pearl Shanonis.
Will you say it again, please?
Gabriella Pearl Shanonis.
Gabriella Pearl Shanonis.
Yeah. And she went by Bella.
Bella. Will you tell us about Bella's journey?
I will. Bella was born with 1p36 deletion syndrome, which means she was missing the tip of her first chromosome. And because of that, she was missing 21 genes. So at the age of 10, she was still very much like a newborn. She was nonverbal. She had to be carried everywhere. She only had really neck control. She could hold her head up and that was it. She suffered from right from birth. She couldn't keep her temperature up. They were worried about infection. They did a spinal tap, and that's when it was discovered that she was born with viral meningitis. So it was right from the get-go. I mean, she already had certain things just stacked against her. We were in the hospital for 21 days with her, 22 days. It's horrifying to go through that.
So when she was first born, you mean that you had to? So she spent the first 21 days in the hospital.
In the NIC unit, she had an NG tube. She wasn't able to latch on, so I couldn't breastfeed her. She was having a hard time, drinking from a bottle even. She was failure to thrive. She had congenitive heart failure. So right from the beginning, there was like I said, a lot of different medical issues going on. She had something called VSDs, which is where there's holes in the heart. And from there, that led to stage 1 renal failure and, all these different complications. She ended up having to have a G-tube in order to just be fed. I had to puree all of her food. I put her on a very strict organic diet, vegan diet, and I juiced. I did everything I could for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she came home with you though?
She came home. Yep. So we came home, and after 2 months, we were back in the hospital with RSV. And then after that is when her seizure started. I was actually on the phone with my mom, and she was in her swing, and her eye just drooped. Like I've never seen an eye droop before. And my first thought was that she's having a stroke. So I panicked, and I took her up to the local hospital, and learned from there that she was actually seizing. And again, she was only 3 months old, not understanding and knowing fully what's going on. You're looking for an answer. You want the doctors to make your child whole. We sat in that hospital for probably 4 to 5 hours before we were transferred to our children's hospital. And that's where they started to address really what was going on. From there, she ended up going into something called status epilepticus. And that's where they were going to put a PICC line into her growing. And instead of going through the artery or the vein, they nicked the artery. And we were only supposed to be out of the room, I think, for 20 minutes, and it had been half an hour. And so I just walked right into the room, and it was filled with 50 doctors and nurses. And I just looked at her leg, and I knew something was wrong. And, from there we were transferred to U of M. And she almost did lose that leg. We were very fortunate that, she was able to keep it, but we were actually talking to vascular doctors because there was a chance that she was going to have to lose her leg.
And this is when she was between 3 and 6 months old?
This was only at 3 months of age.
Still at 3 months.
3 months
all that
age.
Happened right.
All of it happened
then.
all at one time. And so she had a team of doctors literally from like A to Z. We were in and out of appointments, 3 to 5 appointments any given day, 5 days a week for almost 10 years of her life. It was just one complication after another. And essentially I was waiting for, the other shoe to drop. It's just like, is this the day? Is this it? Is this the day? And so for 10 years, you really learn and appreciate and change your perspective on a lot of different things.
I've had a few mothers that have had nonverbal autistic children and that were on the show. That whole changing of perspective, like how did you communicate with Bella? Because you did, because you saw the eye. How?
I can't explain it other than I knew what she was thinking. Her facial expressions said it all. She had so many different facial expressions, and I just started giving, terms to her facial expressions. And, from there, she was smart. She was cognitive. She knew what was going on. And, she actually took a nonverbal math test in school.
I have no idea what that is. Can you tell me or tell us what?
It's where, they held up pictures and told her what the picture said. And then she had to answer the question. And she got a beat on it, for Christ's sakes.
How did she express her answer?
By pointing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she did have more motion later on?
Not really. She played with her hands a lot. So we actually, she was learning baby signing time through the videos, baby signing time. So one of her Deletion Syndrome 1P36 has a conference yearly that we go to. And one of the conferences was in Utah. And Rachel Coleman was one of the guest speakers who does baby signing time. And so we started playing baby signing time from there on out. And she ended up having over 21 different signs and was starting to put them together. And then that's around the time that she developed something called eosinophilic esophagitis, which is basically she was allergic to foods.
Mm.
So for almost 9 months, she threw up on average 9 times a day. That was just the average. It didn't matter what I gave her, what I fed her. She just started vomiting. So I started, going to all the doctors I could, possibly take her to. Is she allergic to food? What's going on? And finally, after I think it was like the 4th one, they said, well, we want to do a biopsy of her esophagus. This is what we think she has. And I was on board with it at first. And I was like, okay. And then they started saying they're going to do like 40 or 50 biopsies at one time. And I'm like, on her esophagus? No, that doesn't make any sense to me. And so I kind of left the appointment. I said, no, we're not going to do surgery. And the doctor was like, frantically, we need to schedule this. And I said, no, you told me what you think is wrong. So now it's my job to fix it. And that was right around the time I was seeing a therapist, massage therapist who worked at Beaumont and turned me onto the GAPS diet, which is a gastroenterological syndrome diet. It was created by a neurologist for her son, autistic son, and it's healing the gut through bone broth and fermented foods. The day I switched her to that diet, I couldn't feed her fast enough. It was like she was starving. It was insane. And to back up, I did my own food elimination diet with her as well. I took her down to the basic foods that I could and slowly started figuring out what she was allergic to and learned like corn has over 77 different names. And if I didn't make it, if I physically didn't make it, if I bought any type of organic food for her, she would throw it up. And it's because of the additives. So
you went right to Whole Foods, and not Whole Foods Market, but using whole and raw foods to do everything.
Yeah.
So Bella and you were full-time then?
Full-time.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
It is what you hung out with Bella all the time.
24/7, yeah. She was my best friend, my little BFF.
How do we transition into, and first of all, I'm really sorry that you're going through this, and I know that this is tough to tell the story. I think it's probably the first time you've told it in front of a camera.
It is.
And I appreciate it, and I'm honored to hear this with everyone else. I've heard bits and pieces, but
yeah.
Kind of sucks having to learn all those big words, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't ever want to be in the position where a lot of parents find themselves. It's a really small community, but yet it's not, because you're the last person you think of that's going to happen to, and lo and behold, that happens to you.
How many people face this every year?
Her syndrome is, they're born with it's 1 in 5,000.
Okay.
Yeah, yearly that are born with it. So when she was born back in 2009, there was 2 years before that is when they had come out with the microarray test, and they were actually able to see the petite, the 1P, the short arm of the first chromosome.
Okay.
Up until that point, they didn't know it existed. And so once we had the microarray test, that's when we had discovered that she had DNA, but she was actually missing a segment of it.
Okay.
And that led, she had seizures. She was nonverbal. She was wheelchair bound. She also had something called mitochondrial defect, and that's where the cells, in the food, they can't make enough energy to support the body.
Okay.
So she stayed really tiny. So at 10 years of age, she was only, I think, 42 pounds. She was still very, very doll-like.
So you started doing something, or you were doing everything, right? I mean.
Yeah, I was doing therapies in Montreal. I didn't care. I was looking for any alternative medicines. That's, where juicing came in the GAPS diet. And, I started, doing the little oils. I can't think what those are called now, but essential oils.
Oh, yeah.
But that led me into cannabis. For 5 years, she was in stage 1 renal failure from pharmaceuticals for seizures. I mean, right at 3 months of age, she developed stage 1 renal failure from them trying to stop her seizures. And it's like, at 3 months of age, now we're dealing with a whole nother issue. And it was never rescue medicine for her. So she actually developed something called Lennox-Gastaut Syndrome, which is a rare form of seizure disorder. But it's a disorder where when you have tried a cocktail of meds, if they don't work, nothing's going to work. So at age 5, I had decided to take her completely off of all pharmaceuticals and put her on medical marijuana, which was a really hard decision to do. But I was watching the health of my daughter deteriorate in front of me versus looking for an alternative that may or may not help.
Yeah. So was it, well, it's hard to make that decision, right? Because you don't want to make a mistake.
Right.
Was it also hard because I guess I would call it even the legacy system, the medical delivery system was fighting against it and didn't have guidance or
absolutely.
They probably threatened you sort of.
Absolutely. So when I first started inquiring it to her doctors, they said no. I mean, they were against it. We had been doing CBD for a year, and I noticed small changes on that with her, but not enough to really say, okay, I'm going to keep her on this. And that's when I started looking, into THC and seeing, okay, what can this do? What does this offer for us? But going back, to Diastat, for instance, that is supposed to be a rescue medicine for seizures. For her, it never worked. None of the pharmaceuticals were ever able to stop her seizures.
But they caused different problems.
Other problems, yes.
Okay.
And so making that decision, I just said, I've always been kind of that person, where you get to that cliff that's like, am I going to jump? Am I going to take the chance or not? And I took the chance.
Did you have support from your family and friends, or?
I kept it really quiet. Her dad knew, my husband at the time, my children knew. I think, the grandparents knew. I kept it very, very quiet. I didn't tell her teachers or her bus drivers right away. I let them know that she was on a new med, and I needed them to give me their feedback into what they were witnessing. And within the first week, her teachers had called me and they were like, Ida, what are you giving this child? And I was like, why? What's going on? And they said, Ida, she's a little bit calmer. She's starting to look around a little bit more and pay attention. And she's starting to eat. And I was like, what? and there's a whole, she had a whole food because she had a G-tube. So that was her power trip. That was the only thing she could control. So she wouldn't eat for a lot of people, especially her teachers. And so all of a sudden, hey, I'm getting a little hungry here. And so I was like, okay, I'm like, that's really good. Can you just keep an eye on this for me? I was starting to notice this from the bus drivers, the same thing. On the way home, a lot of times she would have these screaming fits where she was nonstop screaming the whole way home. And again, they were reporting, hey, she's not screaming. She's kind of looking around and paying attention. And that just led to me being more comfortable about it, sharing more about it. But because of that, we were actually discharged from U of M from Ann Arbor, from the neurology department.
Because of her progress, or because I did that?
Because I chose to take her off of all pharmaceuticals and put her on medical marijuana. And I panicked. I, for 2 months, called around the entire state of Michigan. I didn't care where I had to drive to. I could not find a doctor to pick us up. And I reached out to Robin, who's a really good friend of mine. And I said, I don't know what to do at this point. And she asked me if I was willing to go public. And I said, absolutely. We need a doctor. And that's when I learned that the tinctures and the oils fell into a gray area. And I started bringing her to the Capitol, telling her story, pulling senators and legislators off the floor, and it was because of her story that we were able to get the MMFLA passed.
That's, it's heartbreaking to me because somebody should have done that before, and you should have known that, and it should have been passed along. Right. It's heartbreaking because you had to hide one of the most important decisions of your life from your community. And it's heartbreaking because the medical delivery system said, we're not going to help you if you're not going to play our game with our pharmaceutical companies.
Exactly. So in what made my final decision was at 5 years of age, she had gone into status epilepticus. And I had chose to treat her at home instead of going into the hospital. And what that means is if I had to taken her into the hospital, because she's continually seizing, they would put her on an intubator and put her to sleep, basically, to knock her out, and until the seizure stopped. I decided to take care of that at home. I had them on the phone with me the entire time. And that was my decision to switch her over to medical marijuana. I could give her 1 ml rectally, and it would stop her seizures within 30 seconds to a minute.
Is that how you always delivered the medicine?
No. So she took, she had a tincture called Cannabiotics that was made for her in Detroit by a caregiver, a really good friend of mine. And she also had 2 other CBD tinctures that we rotated. And then on top of that, she had suppositories, and she also had something called her rescue medicine, which is what I called it. But I was able to replace Valium with.
She was on Valium?
She was on, at one point, 20 different medications. And I fought really hard to get her off of all of those medications because there was no quality of life.
Yeah. Which happens to children, adults. I mean, there's a whole spectrum of people suffering, especially in the pain management spectrum of that. It was pain, it was seizures, it was eating, it was getting rid of something that the other one caused.
Right. And at the end of the day, there's no quality. There's absolutely no quality of life. You're right. You're going from one issue to the next issue, trying to deal with one, and it's a snowball effect.
And when you get to 20 medicines and the interactions, there's no database that can track this. If you ever want to understand why, look up what 20 factorial is. It's 20 times 19 times 18. That's the number of possible interactions when you have 20 medicines, and that number is going to be in the million billions, the biggest number you can think of.
Yeah.
So what a nightmare there too, because you don't even know if this and this and that.
Exactly.
What that does.
Yeah. I mean, it's really sad what we put ourselves through in the name of science, to be honest with you.
Did you feel like you were part of an experiment, that Bella was part of an experiment
Every day.
The entire time?
Every day. I look back on it and I have to understand that I did what I knew was right at the time. And now it's helping others to understand that they have choices.
Well, this is a super hard question. It's not fair. You probably wish you would have started it sooner without quite knowing, or was it the right time?
Timing's everything. I believe firmly that everything happens for a reason, whether we agree with it or not. And everything happens for our greater good, whether it be bad or not. There's always good in that lesson somewhere.
Did you ever feel like you were in a legal, like they were looking at you?
Oh, absolutely. When I first started, becoming vocal about what she was on, I had a huge fear of CPS being called. And it wasn't until, it was explained to me that the amount of care that she required, the state wouldn't even take her from me. And that had a whole nother layer of emotions attached to it as well.
Yeah. So CPS never came, or that's good.
Yeah.
Ostracized by friends or anybody? I mean,
it was more from family. It was my friends were more encompassing, more supportive. Unfortunately, a lot of times our friends are involved in a more day-to-day life than our families are.
Yeah.
And when you're witnessing and seeing someone's life, quality of life change, and she's starting to thrive and she's starting to giggle and pay attention. You don't question it anymore.
Yeah.
You know, you're doing something right.
So Bella passed, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to walk through all that
I
part
will,
of it.
because of that injury that she sustained at 3 months of age from the DVT,
Mhm.
the deep vein thrombosis, her pelvis never formed properly. So at 7, they had to go in and cut her femur in half, put it back in socket, take bone from her pelvis and build the shelf, and then put pins and screws back in her femur so it could heal. 12 days after we came home from the hospital, she went into status again. And that's when I did not have a do not resuscitate on her at that time. But I understood how important it was at that time to put one on her. So after we were in ICU for 7 days, we were discharged. And then it was that January, she had a series of seizures, and I just knew it was her time, and she passed away that April. But it was pain. There was no pain management. Again, experiments, the surgeries that we put ourselves through. It's insane.
Sorry. Then you had to make a decision what to do next.
Yeah. So I had the do not resuscitate on her. And I woke up one morning and found her face down in her bed, seizing, and I knew it was time to call hospice. I knew we had reached that point. She physically didn't have enough strength to turn over. She could roll from her back to her sides and her side to her back, but she could not roll over on her stomach. She couldn't push herself up. I mean, there was no muscle support. And it was during that time of home hospice is when we were able to use cannabis as her end-of-life care treatment as well. And it was encouraged, actually.
By the
doctors, yes. Yeah. So in the end, it helped give her quality to go peacefully.
So like many of us who lose children, you got to pick up the fight.
Yeah, you have to find a way to keep going for yourself because there's no one else that's going to do it for you.
So now you're advocating and you're trying to change this, right?
Yeah.
Would you mind transitioning into that and telling us the organization, how you got involved with that maybe?
Yeah. So it was that she passed away April 2019, and it was that October where my friend Robin called me, and asked if I was still, needing a job, looking for a job, and I said yes. And she's like, "Great, I need you." And she brought me on board with the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association, and we lobby on behalf of our licensed cannabis business owners. So any regulatory issues that they have on a state level, we address those with MRA, Director Brisboe and his team. And then, it's an association, so we have different membership levels, and yeah.
So is the mission there, what's the mission of the organization, and maybe what's your mission? Like,
cannabis is medicine, essentially. It's all inclusive. It should not be demonized. It is a medicine. It's a legitimate medicine, and we need to start recognizing that and understand and start tearing down those walls and be open-minded enough to say, hey, if this is working for you, so be it.
what do the walls look like today?
More cities, allowing medical to come in or rep to come in. And it's understanding, with my daughter, we lived in Grand Blanc. In order for me to get her medicine, I would have to drive down to Detroit to get it. which I don't have a problem driving, but to take your child who seizes all the time on trips back and forth, it's when you can just go down the road maybe 10 miles in your own town to get medicine.
Then, and you were lucky, right? That you could do that.
I was lucky that, to be able to get medicine.
Yeah.
In the first place.
Yeah, I didn't mean lucky, but I guess privileged, if you would, to be
Right.
able to have a car and to be able to go that far.
Absolutely.
And then there's all these other problems with payment too, right?
So we were extremely fortunate. All of her caregivers, all of the medicines that she was provided for was over $1,000 a month was given to us.
Oh, that's nice.
I would have had to have fundraised separately for that. As a special needs parent, all your extra money goes into your child, whether it be for equipment, medicine, modifications, a talking device.
So do you work towards insurance companies paying? Like, I've known someone who has brain tumors, and Rick Simpson oil has been helping him survive. But it is extremely expensive, and if they didn't have their own grow operation, they would not be able to do it at all.
Right.
Should insurance be covering this?
I don't see why not. Absolutely.
It's a medicine.
It's a medicine.
Is your mission the same as the organization?
Essentially, mine's more of a quality of life. I am more firmly rooted in the medical side. I'm coming out with a line, a brand called Bella's Journey, and I'm recreating all of the products that my daughter was on. That's going to be launching in November, and I'm also going to have an adult dose and then a small dose.
Okay. So for smaller adults.
Exactly, for smaller adults. But again, it will be all of the medicines, and I want to give references on how to take it. So she was dosed per body weight, and it was encouraged that whatever medicine I give her, no matter what the dose, I take it as well, so I could feel the effects on me. That's when I learned for the Rick Simpson oil that wasn't the medicine for her. I took the small dose that I would normally give her, tried it, and thought, oh, hell no.
Knocked you out.
No, this is not for her.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So there is trial and error. It's just like any medicine or any form of healing that you're going through. It's trial and error, and you have to be patient and understand this might work, this may not work, or maybe a combination is going to work.
So what's that, a processor license or something you have to get to do this?
Nope, I'm actually partnering with a grower and a processor who
already has?
Who's going to be doing that for me.
Nice.
And we're going to be coming out again in November with the product line Bella's Journey. So the first products coming out are going to be a CBD tincture and a CBD salve, and that will go into the rec market. And my hope is to get parents into the dispensaries comfortable talking to the bud tenders, getting educated, asking questions, because it is a new world. And I understand the trepidations and the fears of going in there, but it's completely different than what you think it is.
Yeah. So are you up against? So you can't I know that it's hard to make claims like on your packaging. Oh, this will cure this, especially in the medical marijuana industry, right? I don't think they can.
No, I'm not making any claims again. So I'm only recreating the medicine that was used on my daughter once I took her off of all pharmaceuticals.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. But do you think people should be able to make claims? And they can make all these outlandish claims with pharmaceuticals. Right.
I think, if something's helping you, then yes, you should be able to claim it. And again, it's understanding that this is not a one-way fits all type of, medicine, but it's understanding that, I had this issue and hey, it may help someone else with the same issue. And so we do need to talk about it.
And there's researchers that won't touch it because we still have the federal problem, and they don't want to lose their American Seed Fund money or whatever it is.
Exactly.
We
need the research. I mean, we need. So back to the pharmaceuticals, when I was researching about the anti-seizure meds for my daughter, I was reading that how they give a child a dose is they take an adult man's dose, they cut it in half for a woman, and then they keep cutting it down for the child. And we have no data or documentation or research other than what they're not showing us.
Right.
I mean, it goes one symptom after another, after another, after another. There's no quality of life there.
Yeah. Those claims on the TV, all the symptoms,
no,
they all sound worse than the original problem.
Exactly. And if you get on one medicine to help with one symptom and it creates 3 more, then that's not truly a medicine. It's a Band-Aid.
What do you do every damn day to push this forward?
I heal. I talk about my daughter. I am very open with my own cannabis use, my own struggles with depression and plant medicines in general, how they've helped me come back from the brink of major depression.
Yeah.
And so that's my passion, is to create, a modality for everyone to heal and to understand, even if it's not for me, I don't have to agree with it. I can still let someone else live their life.
And you guys would have heard me a million times say, to me, this is a cure-all. It's preventative. It's cure. I think cannabis is a very important thing we've missed out on because of the war on drugs, the war on us.
Yeah.
And then in the Ann Arbor area, they decriminalized psychedelics, all psychedelics,
All
so
psychedelics,
MMA and all. Not MMA, but I think that's the guys that fight. But I'm also pro magic mushrooms and microdosing and all that. And I'm speaking of myself here, not necessarily you.
That's what helped me from my depression. So I'm very open with my own use.
So look out, government. Here comes everybody. Thank you so much for telling that story.
Thank you very much.
I think we'll weave into it a little bit more. We got a few more things here.
Okay.
So yesterday on the show, I daisy-chained them together, and Oprah, she's running for city council in Ward 2. I think she would be pro your movement. So I think some policy changes are coming, hopefully to Lansing soon. What's the best advice you've ever been given?
The best advice has been to not take myself too seriously. There's always going to be someone younger, smarter, prettier, richer. Do what you can do, and make a name for yourself. And that's what I want to do, is not take myself seriously and get out of my own way.
Yeah. It's seems like that would be hard to balance, right? Because it's serious work and it's a serious mission and it's for a serious reason.
Well, it's for me, it's been finding my joy. Being able to get up out of bed every day when the sun's shining, even when the sun's not shining. It's waking up and being thankful. I get to fight another day, and that's how I look at it now. Is I don't want to waste any more of my time that I have left. I want to create and conquer. Yeah.
So we're kind of leading into the next question too. So tomorrow on the show, I have a gentleman named Rich. He works for the Michigan Justice Advocacy and the Good Time Initiative. So works with returning citizens, people unfairly treated in the judicial system. A lot of tie in there. We were talking about the legacy cannabis market, which was before it was legalized, and then the post-cannabis market, which is, a lot of basically rich people have come in and gotten all the licenses to grow, to process, to transport, to do all the things you need licenses for, to grow a plant in our own yard even.
Yeah.
So, what question would you like me to pass on to Rich? But we kind of hint on it, so we can still blend it in.
Yeah.
Unless you change.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, how does he find his joy? Because it is different for all of us.
And for you, it's going to be pouring your creativity into your creations.
And it's appreciating the small things.
Oh yeah.
I'm really understanding and appreciating, the little flower that's growing up.
I had a therapist from the police department called me because I had been involved in a pretty traumatic thing that happened. And her advice to me was, tomorrow morning when you wake up and you get your toothbrush, you say thank you to your toothbrush, and you say thank you to that toothpaste. And I was like, this is some bullshit. I ain't doing this. And I did that though, and it
changes your
wonders for me.
Yeah. When we can exude gratitude for what we do have, I think that's huge.
We should add gratitude maybe to our list that I'm about to ask you. We got 19 shows to go. Happiness, sadness, joy, hope, or love. Do you want to stick with joy? Do you want to talk about a different one? Which word would you like to talk about?
We can talk about gratefulness. I changed it up on you. Can I do that? Sure. Okay.
Sure. Okay. There's no rules here. Okay. Everyone thinks there's rules because I send them a run-up show. What do you want to say about it? Or is this where I have to come up with a bunch of questions?
Well, yes. But I'm grateful for all of my life lessons. I truly am one of those people who do not look back and wish I had done something differently or want a different outcome. It happened for a reason, and I had to learn from that, and it's moving forward. And I'm very grateful to be able, again, to live another day, to keep fighting and move forward.
Yeah. Do you, that sounds like you're getting close to, you're very, very grateful with every single thing that you and Bella went through and every outcome that you had?
No matter how hard it was to go through and how devastating it was, if I can help someone else so that they understand, again, that they have choices and that they don't have to go through what medical society or, I can't even think of what I'm looking for right now, but the medical community deems necessary. There are other alternatives to healing.
This, we always call the hospitals and the pharmaceuticals and the people in that, we call it the medical delivery industry.
Right.
And they're there to do what the pharmaceuticals tell them, or the surgeon, the surgeries kind of gets fuzzy too as to whether you need that. I'm drawing a blank, but we had a company, Rejuvenate, that's up in Petoskey.
Okay.
And she has a clinic where she uses sound waves and different types of therapies there to actually get cells to do what they're supposed to do. I was thinking about that when you were saying earlier that she had that cell disease. I'm not
the mitochondrial.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's definitely interesting. And, back to communicating with her. So I do something called Reiki, which is energy work. And I also receive messages. And so I think from being open with her, it's opening up. I've always been open, but I always knew. I just knew what she was thinking and was able to.
I completely get that.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I get it, but I just get it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely it's a connection that I'll always hold near and dear.
Do you find yourself then also saying, all right, when I look at this medical system, these people, well, first of all, healthcare should happen in rooms like this with people you love and people you know and all of that. But they throw this HIPAA and don't talk about it. And oh my God, you're going to do something weird like that. Don't tell your family or whatever.
Right.
So now we're all scared when we go sit in that office and we go only talk to this guy that, we can't question anybody else to say, is he telling me the truth? Because, they tell us not to do that. And it's the exact wrong.
Well, so again, you have to go back to television and what we see. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, that is reality and that is life. And so on TV, we're shown people are out of their minds when they're high. And instead of the reality of it, where, it helps bring down your blood pressure and it helps bring down your anxiety. And, oh my goodness, I have the munchies, I'm hungry, or it blows my mind that people just want to freak out about it. And
I haven't gotten munchies from smoking weed since about 1988.
I don't get them either,
It might
but-
have happened in the early days, but
yeah. But overall, let's just, talk about alcohol, for example. You go out and have a couple drinks, you get all riled up, there's a fight breaking out.
Mhm.
You're at a party, you've got a couple joints passed around, everyone's got a guitar out and singing. I mean, there's a campfire going on. It's just it's a completely different energy, between the two. And it's just understanding that it is medicine. No matter which way you look at it, everything that we do, that we consume, is a form of medicine.
that's right. Food is medicine
Food
too,
is
everyone.
medicine.
You started there, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that we didn't cover that you do want to cover? Because this is exhausting, I know. And
I'll just look at my notes real quick, but I don't. I think. Thank you for taking the time to. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The medicines though. I did say, there's going to be a tincture and a salve that will be on the CBD side in the rec market. Everything else is going to be in the medical market.
okay.
So it's getting everyone comfortably coming into the dispensaries, at least getting a medicine to start with, and then coming back with your medical card, going through the process, and then going back in, getting the higher doses, because that's where you really want to work with someone to understand how much you need to take, what you can mix, what you can't mix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there an industry of coaches that can help, or advisors, or is it always?
There's not really. It's more the bud tenders in the
Mhm.
dispensaries. Something that I would like to do once Bella's Journey launches is I would like to have my own podcast, so that I'm able to answer questions, for people that are coming in. And again, it's finding the comfort with it and being able to talk about it out in the open. And for me, no topic is off topic.
Yeah.
I'll talk about anything. So.
Well, I'm proud to have gotten to know you. I'm honored that you came and told the story for the first time here. When's Bella's Journey launching?
This November.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we're a couple months away.
A couple months.
Will you be able to share links or where people, can we do that later? Or
We
is
can
there
do
a
that
place?
later. Yep. So the reason that this is taking as long as it has, it's taken over a year, is I have changed my name legally. So I've taken Bella's middle name and I've adopted it to my middle name. So I am now Ida Pearl Lee instead of Ida Lee. And because of COVID, legally changing that, I'm waiting for the petition to come back from the court. And then from there, I have to change actually my birth certificate and vital records. So
Okay.
once all of that is done, hopefully within the next couple of weeks.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
Also, Jim, thank you for coming and adding some support. So he's over there in the background. He's not coming on. You can come on screen if you want, but I'm embarrassing and putting you guys on the spot. But I just thank you very much for being kind and bringing support, because it's amazing to have strong people around and have strong relationships. So thank you.
It is.
Hope
It's
that was
important.
okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay. What do you want to take us out with?
I hope you all find joy and peace and love and acceptance of yourself.
I'll second that. Ibid, maybe you can say. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Jerry.
Love you all. This is an important cause. Support it. You know how I feel. You know how most of us feel. So we're going to get there.
We will.
Thank you for doing this work to get us there.
Thank you.
See y'all.